pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Joe, you want to give us an update on the organizational structure?
Yeah, so the ads have gone out for candidates for your fifth and sixth positions that the town will appoint, the county will appoint. And then from that pool, the intention is still to bring those folks back to you guys. You'll say, hey, we really like this one or that one, and we'll ask the bodies to jointly appoint that seventh person. That's still on track.
They should be coming in the next 2 weeks. I've got a copy of the application here if anybody wants to see it. We revised it a little bit. We do have one applicant so far. We're sending a copy to Connie. Ads run in the paper for both the county and the city, so we don't both have to run ads. And they can submit either to the town or the county. I figure we'll pull the applicants. You guys can pick one you like, we pick one we like, and that'll do the two. So we should be able to do that by your board meeting if everybody gets their applications in 2 weeks.
And so now's the time too, if you know of anyone or if there's anyone that you thought of that, you know, you would like to have expressed an interest, they do need to go through that process. So, you know, just, we want as many people in the pool as possible. Now, with respect to the interlocal, I have started working on making that into more of an authority. And talking with David, I think it makes sense for y'all to be fully constituted before you decide this is what we want to look like, right? I think all 7 of you should have input on that. So that's sort of what the schedule's looking like. We're gonna get you fully constituted, and then make sure you all work on that. So everything's on course.
Joe, have you also, I mean, on our interlocal agreement at that time, we're gonna have one interlocal agreement for water and sewer, right?
Water, sewer, and the authority itself. So remember, we're gonna try to craft a document sort of like what the SBTA has, that says, hey, we're the different governing bodies. We're going to take some of our authority and hand it over to the now you'll be a special district. So that's part of the reason this gets more complicated. Statute requires you to have certain websites posted. You have to have profiles of all of them. There's information that has to be out there on a special. Believe it or not, it's very similar to what Reedy Creek is, you know, the one that's in the news right now. Mm-hmm. So we also have to kind of be careful about creating a special district in the environment right now. But I don't think there's going to be nothing that's insurmountable. We just have to be attentive.
What we're going to probably just like to tell everybody, Commissioner Witt had a training session with his job that he couldn't get out of today, so he just wanted to let everybody know he wanted to be here, but unfortunately, sometimes you can't get out of certain obligations. So.
And also, we are recording it for YouTube, so anybody can watch it at any time.
Yeah, we are.
And by the folks in Fort White, don't feel like you have to drive to.
We are live on YouTube now. So.
And Stu. These two.
And Stu.
Okay.
It'll be posted on the website, so like Commissioner Witt can come back later and watch it.
Update on water. Greg, you want to give us an update on that?
Yes, sir. Got a handout here, and I'm gonna let Bob get up, go over the details of it. But just kind of in summary, when we got started with it, we were looking at a 12-inch PVC line. When we started on this project, we were looking at a 12-inch line to carry the water, and kind of traditionally around here we've used PVC for that, so that was the basis of our design. But what's happened, the market is still in a state of flux, so we looked at other materials, and one of the other materials that has a lot of favor now in the industry is HDPE. A little bit different construction technique with it. PVC is all mechanical joint, bell and spigot with reinforcement. HDPE is all welded joints. So a little bit different technique there, but is being used more in the market today than what it had in the past. What has happened with that is PVC with the cost of resin and some of the manufacturing, cost of PVC has been going up, HDPE has been going down.
Really?
So there is a significant savings if we do HDPE versus PVC. So I'm gonna let Bob go over all that. There are some other, there's pros and cons to them, but you need to kind of make a decision. We've given this information to Mike Knoll at purchasing, but we'll need to make a determination which direction we want to go. So with that, Bob, I'm gonna let you.
Greg, is that the black pipe that you see them just stretching at, basically, like you said, it just welds together?
You weld it together and you can lay it in long stretch.
I got you.
And the whole key there is, like it is with anything else, it's finding somebody who welds it well. Because, I mean, if you get a bad area of welding, then obviously you're gonna have some blowouts. But, and that's the key thing that you put in. What you've got is just, put it together. Ricky Hendricks from our office put it together. You can just do, or you can send it over to Mike. And what you've got is you've got three options you see under number 2, and that shows the PVC, the DR11 HDPE, which is 200 psi. As you go down up in number, you're going down in working pressure, and then you got 13.5 at 160. Our sense is that looking at it, because I'm sure all of you know that when you start over there at Bailey, that's about the high point right there, coming all the way to Fort White. You're about 160 something in there, and you get Fort White about 70 something. So you're actually, from a static head standpoint, you're really going downhill once you get past that little hill there. So the fact that you got a little bit smaller pipe with an HDPE really is not that much of an impact. I mean, you're gonna lose a little bit more head, but it's not gonna be that big an issue. If you turn to the back pages, that's gonna give you an idea as far as the difference in cost. The first page that you got will show, this is from 2 actual vendors. They've given us the quotes. You got about 2.8 million and 2.9 million for PVC. One from Fort Line and the other from Core and Main. And then if you turn to the DR11, it'll drop down to shows about 2.25 or about 2.1. All right, so you drop down that much, and then if you go all the way down to the DR13.5, which is again pressure rating on 160 with the PVC 235, but you've got a tremendous cost savings there, because what you're looking at is about around 1.6, a little bit if you average them over 1.6 million. So the difference between that and PVC is again
About $1 million.
over $1 million. So that's been sent to Mike. When you look up here and it talks about the order percentage, what you can do is what the discussion that we've had is how much of this, and this is just a discussion for when you get to the point that if you want to order 100% of it, or you want to, say order 90%, that way you got that much to start with. In the interim, when the contractor starts, he can bring in the other 10%. He'll have plenty of time. What we found is, and what we found is in researching this, is in actuality, the two, as far as the being able to obtain it, are coming closer and closer together. Right now, it's probably, the vendors say it's probably 3 weeks to a month to get HDPE faster by about a month's time. But you can see the difference in cost, and the word that we get is there's still some divergence in cost. It's actually getting bigger between HDPE and PVC. So those are the options that we've looked at from standpoint of PVC is 12-inch. Again, we've done a model on this. I mean, not a rigorous model, but we've taken it and we've looked at it. And run it from static head, friction head, all the way over, and, the 12-inch in that neighborhood, and then with the size of, the inner diameter on the, 13.5 and 11, look like it'll be fine, you don't need to lose that much pressure. Yes, sir.
This may sound like a silly question, but given the difference in pipe, is there any impact on long-term operation and maintenance?
Well, what they found, and I asked that, I actually asked for that question this morning, I said, to make sure, I said, what's the most recent that you've heard as far as the longevity compared to PVC to HDPE, and as far as maintenance compared? He said, based upon the feedback that he's got from contractors and vendors, is that they're pretty much equivalent.
Mr. Bob, how do you make the connection with HDPE to PVC? Is that with a mechanical joint, or how would you do that?
I mean, you use ductile iron. It'd be mechanical joint.
Yeah.
They have fittings for doing that.
Yeah.
We run that tip because if you're doing directional drills under the interstate or under a river or something, some obstacle you got to go under, if you use directional drill, we always use HDPE. That's always the case. Even connecting to PVC on either end of it.
Right. Because coming down 18 there, once you come off of 41, you're not too far down 18, you've got those two creeks in there, and we're actually be directional drilling those.
Yeah, where the bridges are on the bike path.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
No impact on TAP and county's ability to maintain long-term.
Chad, do you have any information you would like to add on, what was your recommendation?
No, but we had the same questions as far as the county, on the county side is, we haven't used this material before. We're all about saving money if it saves money. And I think even in the email, it says that, the installation costs may take up some of your savings, if not all of your savings. So we're gonna try to look at all that before we make that decision.
And Chad's right.
I was just fixing to ask that question.
There is some difference, because again, you're welding all right. And so it's not like you're taking the spigot, you're running the PVC pipe in there, which is a lot easier.
So I was gonna ask, an offset of the savings.
There is an offset as far as, we don't believe that it's going to be enough to take up all your savings.
Right.
To be honest, but there is some offset.
And then, then you got to make that decision. Say you save $500,000. Then we've got to have two different kinds of repair kits. We got to have the repair kits for the PVC line that we already have. And we're gonna have to have repair kits for the new line. We're gonna have to know how to use that new line, which is not saying that we can't. These are just things that we're gonna have to overcome. So that's kind of what we're at. And also, I think option C has a much lower pressure rating. So we got to kind of somehow put a dollar amount on that. Is it worth it for $200,000? Probably not. Is it worth it to save $1 million? Probably.
I kind of had a heads up on some of this stuff, so I have asked some questions to some contractors that use this. And, from the information I can gather, HDPE is probably the future for it.
I agree.
So, that's everyone that I've asked about that agrees that HDPE is gonna be the future work.
So at what point do you need a decision from this group?
Well,
We're bidding out all three options. Right. So we'll have all three numbers. But what we will need to do, and I'm meeting with our purchasing director this morning at 11 to kind of finalize this and get some information back to Greg, is we're gonna go ahead and kind of bid out the three options. That way we can make that decision. We will probably get with them and try to come up with some estimated construction costs. So we know what that real number is, rather than just saying we can save $1 million in material. We need to know what the real savings is gonna be. So we'll try to do all that. So I'm assuming if we bid this out, Mike's gonna give them 30 days. So it'll be a month and a half or so before we receive any numbers back.
So we're far enough along with the plans and the material list that we can bid this?
We're just bidding the materials.
Just the material.
Right.
Just the material.
Now, the reality is your neighbor over here has decided that they wanted to use DR 17 on one of their locations. And so from the standpoint though, as far as the additional money to install it, I mean, we've got something, don't we, from Denison?
We do, that was designed with PVC and the contractor switch, did a value engineering proposal and they had to save money. Plus it was a lead time issue for them as well.
That's really what's pushing it.
That's what's pushing it more than anything.
The time and the cost right now is what's it.
PVC, as Bob said, has, kind of changed, the market's kind of changed, but we still are in a supply chain crisis in this country, so.
Well, supply and demand, so everybody's gonna be switching to the HDPE, it's gonna become another, then the price is gonna jump up, but we don't have to get stuff on order, so.
So what I'm hearing is by this time next month, we should have some numbers together, is that what?
Well, you'll have your bids back, so you'll know that part of it, and then
As far as material cost.
we can talk to contractors and all.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, from the gas industry, that's all it used.
I know, yeah, that's what I.
We did a line for Jasper, it's been probably almost 10 years ago now. Ran it out to the interstate for them, and, it went pretty well. I mean, it's a high pressure line that we ran, so.
And one of the things I'm hearing, because with the cost being more delayed, is because it's new. And there's still kind of a learning curve.
Well, I think that was the case a few years ago, but I don't think that's the case now. I think there's enough of it in the ground that it's not a learning curve.
You see it everywhere.
Now, your bigger contractors are big onto it.
That's what,
Your smaller contractors may not yet.
right.
We've got a number of contractors out of Jacksonville that do it every day.
So what would it cost, why would the cost be more to install this?
Welding.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you're not gonna have nearby as many joints, so.
The biggest thing is the cost of the machinery. When you're doing those fuse joints, when you're handling a 12-inch line, there's a machine, they use a machine that basically, it's a huge plastic welding machine that eats both ends of the pipe and then shoves them together and they fuse. And it holds that joint to where it's stable before it releases it. And it logs it, it checks it, it looks for, any flaws in that weld, and you get a report off of it.
Right.
So the cost of that machinery is the biggest thing of it.
And they have to be certified, to do the welding. So you've got that, you don't have to be certified to go out there and put in PVC pipe. And like Greg said, you're getting a report off. I mean, if you want to get a report off at each weld, you can.
So do you limit people that can bid this project by doing HDPE?
No more than you limit any other thing, but you want qualified people to do it. There's a number of contractors out there. Is, our local plumber gonna be able to bid on it? No. But, a big site contractor, utility contractor will certainly bid on it.
They'll find someone that's capable,
That's what I was gonna say, that probably company out there to do, wait till you just do welding.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, so.
And I'll tell you what, our local contractor is doing the job over in Swanee, and he's hired the bigger firm to come in and do the welding. He's doing all the laying, but they're doing the welding for him.
Right.
And you take every so many joints you take, and the other thing you do is you cut that joint out and you test that joint. You pull it apart, make sure that, everything's going well.
Yeah. Well, I think I talked to them, and from what I'm hearing, HDPE is probably where everybody's gonna be going.
Now, Chad brought up, and he is correct, you do got to have the materials, the diameters are different, so a T for HDPE is not the same as a T for a PVC connection. So you do have to have, kind of two of each, per se.
Which is doable. It's just something that we have to keep in mind as we move forward.
Sound like though, it might be a lot easier to get a HDPE T than a PVC T in the future. They probably have a lot lot less cost.
I think the more you see this in the ground, you're gonna, as Bob's talking about her, the diverging on price, you're gonna see that continue.
Any more questions? Well, transfer water use permits, who wants to talk about that?
Well, most of them just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page. We were envisioning at some point the town transferring your consumptive use permits to the county. I don't know when that point is, and I don't wanna,
To the county or to the utility?
well, ultimately to the
To the
utility
utility, right.
authority.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had any input on
I
that. or-
think in light of, you know, water use permit exercise we just went through for the industrial park, I think everybody has seen the value of that water use permit, so we don't want to let them go away or get away from us. So at some point, obviously, we're still utilizing that one right now until we bring this online. But there's going to come a point where we need to start that discussion with the district to be able to transfer that to the utility authority, but we still have the need for that water.
Yeah, that's something hard to get right now, so.
I actually had some conversations with the district last week because we're doing the same thing with the rest area. And we just tied the rest area onto the Ellisville. They have a consumptive water use permit. So we're in the process of trying to get that moved over. I had the same conversation with them at the time about the same thing with Fort White's. You know, because we'd never done this before, just seeing the process and what we needed to do. So it seems to be a fairly easy process. I'm with Greg though. There's no reason, you know, just as long as everybody knows that's the plan, we won't even try to do it until well after this water line's in place and it's feeding Fort White before we ever try to take the consumptive use there and move it to Ellisville.
I think the most important thing is we don't want to lose.
Correct, yes.
We want
Yeah, you don't want to wait 4 years. You want to do it a couple months.
And we don't want it to come as a surprise to the town.
No, yeah. Because Fort White's limited in its capacity to, just like anybody.
Right.
You know, you've got X number, we've added on, you know, quite a few businesses at the interchange, we've added on the rest area. We're gonna add on Fort White, so the capacity in that plant, we're gonna have to increase the water use permit, and we're gonna have to increase, the plant itself, what it can treat per day.
In Ellisville,
Yes, but not just to bring on Fort White, but
right, I understand.
for
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. That intersection, I hope to see it grow a lot more before it's over with, but it's growing.
We're anticipating another truck stop.
Oh, really? Really? Good deal. Chairman, it was brought up in our meeting about the property that Fort White acquired from Swanee River Water Management District. And we feel like that something, once this committee is actually formed and we get this ball rolling, we probably need to make a move to go ahead and start improving that property so that we do not lose that. Because if we don't use it, everybody knows that Swanee River is going to take it back. So that was brought up at our board meeting last week, that we probably need to take some kind of action out there and do something just so that we don't lose that property, because that could potentially be used for all sorts of things for the water system. So we can put well sites out there or anything. So, we just got to keep that in mind. Well, at some point, we're going to be expanding, so. Yeah, and that's what kind of brought that up, was the expansion, that once, you know, once Fort White's tied in, and let's say 5 years down the road, we start looking at expanding north, say to Columbia City, towards Columbia City. That's where we feel like that property can be utilized, and just being from Fort White, that's one of our things that we want to be able to say, okay, we acquired this property, but we're willing to use that because, I mean, the way the county has stepped up to help us. So, I mean, that's just one little perk that we have that can be used, that we won't have to purchase anything. I mean, what, Ronnie, it's almost 100 acres.
It is.
Yeah, so I mean, we got almost 100 acres out there that we can utilize. So. Is there any stipulation on that property being used as for water? Or maybe for future, for sewer, water also?
The agreement that I remember was just water.
Yeah, I believe it was kind of deemed for a well site.
You could possibly do a recharge project there, but I don't know if it's suited for that or not.
Right.
It was certificate.
So you go ask, I mean, we can always present it to them.
I mean, that's what somebody can get with.
Yeah.
About.
Well, I mean, times are changing. I mean, this community is just now, I mean, it's brand new, so I mean. I'm
So
sure
it's
they probably
probably
trying
for
to work with
permission,
us.
you know?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
That's, like I say, good point, that's a 100-acre site.
That's
That's our point, if we need it.
And then the location is
Yeah.
sitting in a really good location.
Good to keep that in our back pocket.
Yes, that was, like I said, that was brought up at our council meeting and, we just kind of wanted to know which way everybody wanted to go and everybody said, hey, being the county's helped us out this much, you know, we want to try to keep this so that, you know, that's like Chairman said, I mean, that's kind of something we got in our back pocket we use.
Water system equipment needs. Greg, water system equipment needs,
We just recently did an inspection for the town for their hydrant pneumatic tank, and it's needing to be replaced. So that's kind of an immediate need we have for that, and to work this. So that's kind of our biggest thing that we see right now from the town's system. Once we get everything connected up, the plan is basically the water to feed into the plant, and we may have to boost the chlorine at that point. Well, once we get the water down there, we can test that, and that system is already in place. But then we'll turn right around and just feed through the tank that the town has there and feed the actual distribution network. So the main line will be just to feed into the town, and then we'll utilize the existing system. But the hydropneumatic tank is the operational part of that we'll need to replace. The most recent inspection indicated that we got some corrosion on the inside, so we've lost some thickness of the tank at the wells. And
is that the big tank that you're talking about, the big water tank? Is that, which one is that?
It's a small pressure tank.
it's the cylinder sitting down there closest to the street, right, to the driveway to the right.
Okay.
The problem is, like Greg said, you got corrosion on your welds, and, you know, that's a big concern as far as one of the wells was.
When we tested the thickness of it, it's getting down to a level that we've got concerns, that we could have.
And that's the original tank that was installed with the water system.
That's the original tank that was installed.
Was that the same email that I got from you?
Yeah, the DEP stated that we immediately have to go forward and recoat the interior of the tank. And it's got to be replaced within 5 years. So the 5 years is plenty doable. We're actually working now trying to get some cost to coat the inside of that tank per DEP's requirements. So.
And and when we coat it, especially since we're coating it in the wells of the corrosion, care needs to be taken from what we saw, because I'm the one that signed the inspection, is that as opposed to blasting it, we need to have to brush it before they coat it, just so that we don't lose any more thickness.
When it's newer and you need to recoat it, we will sandblast it inside typically. You'll sandblast the whole coating off, get down to a good metal, then we apply the potable water epoxy on the inside of it. In this particular case, as Bob said, we don't want it to be blasted because we're afraid we may lose even more material than what's we're comfortable with, so we want to brush that.
What's the cost of replacing that tank versus coating?
I don't have that information here today. We wouldn't certainly get over detail.
We've got two, we went to two vendors. The average cost between the two one was close to $5.
I was gonna say
around
$5.
$6, so around, between 5 and 6.
I think we already priced them one time.
The
First
replacement,
started this.
That's the replacement?
what's the cost of coating? You have that number?
We had to coat.
I think that's the number we need. That's what we're doing on the county side. So
I mean, if we gotta replace it in 5 years, My question is, do we spend the money to coat it at this point, or do we just replace it?
We've got to code it.
We've got to coat it?
And we will probably replace it along with this much larger project we're talking about,
Right.
water main extension or any more improvements we have to make at the Fort White plant. We can phase replacing that hydromatic tank in with that.
I think we had a inspection done on that tank, what, 2 years ago?
I think every 5 years you have to have an inspection on that.
Well, you do, but I think we just had it done 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can pull the check, 'cause you certified.
You had one ground storage tank.
Yeah, I know you had the memory coated. You had them recoated inside.
Yes.
You had the ground storage tank. This was a hydromatic tank.
You're talking about.
Okay.
Like gas tank,
Yes,
propane
yes,
tank?
okay, gotcha.
So we'll,
Then county talked about, is there a need for a skid steer or backhoe or dump truck or something?
Yes, yes.
I think the town of Fort White has been looking at a backhoe, is that correct?
That's right.
We've just been having some funding issues. We've gotten several grants, but as we all know, the government pretty much tells us how we can spend it. We just haven't been able to afford it lately, but we gonna talk about that in the next meeting, I'm sure.
Let's talk about this grant money now, about, I know it's been brought to my attention that y'all have some grants. that Basically has to be used for water system stuff. Y'all would like to contribute some of that to the county for repairs and stuff. Y'all would like for the county maybe to purchase a piece of equipment, if possible. So for some of that, be funds, some of that grant money, they would have with that work. Is that something the county can do?
Well, it would be two separate actions.
Okay.
Obviously, if they have ARPA money, if they want to contribute ARPA money to the water projects, they can. The water projects are an eligible expense under ARPA. It would be a separate then decision for the county to make if we want to buy equipment for the town and the utility.
So, and that was brought up in our meeting. So from what I understand, we have $150,000 grant to help us redo the water water meters in Fort White. Because, I mean, we really need to get those redone, especially when this committee takes over, because they're original.
Right, and Chad just applied for a river grant
And
for
so,
that purpose
as we all know, things slow down over time, right? So we're basically figuring, we don't know how much revenue we're losing per month over some of these meters slowing down. So we've got a grant for $150,000. So we figure we've got a single axle, like dump bed truck that, is almost outdated, I'd say. And then we have a rubber tire backhoe that just needs to go to the scrapyard. But if we could just get two simple pieces of equipment, we're thinking if we could give the $150,000 for the water meters to the county, because the county's already figured in the budget to replace the water meters. The county's already budgeted that in. So Fort White's kind of requesting if we pay for the $150,000 for the water meters, which that's our projected cost to replace them, if we could work out a deal with the county and maybe trade some equipment instead of the county paying for the water or the water meter.
Like I said, we'd have to do it as two separate decisions.
Right.
But what we could do is we could go to the county commissioners and say,
Right.
this committee has requested
Mhm.
the purchase of these pieces of equipment.
And probably part of that agreement, I would think that if any of that equipment needs to be used at some point.
I was just fixing to say.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
And that's the thing is,
And just keep it in Fort White.
Yeah, it would just kind of be joint equipment. I mean, I would say, because if the
Makes
county.
more sense.
Well, because right now,
Right.
right now, if our utility needs equipment, they have to borrow it from public works.
Well, I'm saying you have to pull,
We
you
don't
have
have
to
any
borrow it,
equipment
you have to
for
pull
Fort
it.
White, do we?
We don't have any yellow equipment.
Exactly.
So even on the Ellisville system, we don't have equipment, something breaks, we've got to borrow it and drive it all the way down.
Right, and that was kind of our point at our meeting, that I brought up. I said, well, if something tears up down here, we'll already have a piece of equipment to use. We won't have to wait on somebody to bring it. So,
And if I'm not wrong in saying this, I think we have another $150,000 coming also.
That was.
So we got
Tony
the
did
first,
mention that.
yeah, we got the first one already, the ARP money, but we've got another, if I'm not
And
mistaken.
it has to be used on water or sewer, right? So we've got $300,000 coming for that.
Fort White does have another allocation coming, and you also applied for a yet to be approved additional allocation.
Right,
So
right.
There could potentially be more than just the 150 you're talking about and the 150 that will come behind it.
Right. Could be
That
additional,
agreement's
right.
done.
Yes, sir.
There's more money beyond that possible.
And we know that this big project is $7.2 million, which originally we
The
were
water
thinking was only
project.
6.
Right.
So any money that we can put towards that
Right.
helps keep that forward.
And we have gotten some grants. We got the $1 million grant too. Right. We got the.
We got $1 million grant, plus we
Yeah.
got so we've got the ARP money and then, is it ARP?
ARPA.
All right,
Mayor, with that, COVID, remember, we.
that's the
Okay,
ARP
okay.
money, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Y'all at the train, what would your view be on that?
Well, in terms of the equipment swap and stuff like that, I mean, I think the most important thing with any grant is that you're compliant with the grant requirements.
Right, and that's what we wanna make sure.
As long as you're checking that off and you don't have any, concerns about, agency doing a chargeback and saying, hey, you misappropriated that money. I also think y'all need to keep in mind that, as you develop this utility, you're all correct, there's no equipment owned by the authority right now, but, this kind of equipment would become the authorities.
Right.
And then you'll also start, instead of, Fort White having a grant, Columbia County having a grant, hopefully we'll be in a position where this authority has its own grants. And so we won't have to, but in terms of, public purpose, whether that's being met when you do these swaps, absolutely. You're not swapping out with a private contractor.
Okay. That was a concern we had down there for a while. We just wanted to make sure everything,
Just make sure we were appropriating money where it needs to be.
Right, exactly.
Not put it over here, and they're giving us something
We
back
just
over here.
figured, I
and
mean,
being illegal, so.
considering that money had to be used on a water and sewer project, that this was a way, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. I mean, like I said, this would be used obviously on the water system if needed, by the county or, whoever needs it.
But my biggest question is that if they allocated money to us, they said, here is for this. We took and used it for that, but then we had the county on the side note and say, well, we're using this for this, but we buy some equipment over here. I just want to make sure that was all above board.
Well, and that's what I think, as long as it's public purpose, which it all obviously is. Right. I think where you run into a problem there is if you said, hey, if we do this, this, and this, will you maybe help out one of our economic development partners, in some way that is under the table. This is very obvious and clear. And again, as long as you're not concerned about that 150 being charged back from this appropriation, which I don't think it would be.
If we're replacing water meters on a water system, that's.
And
legit as it gets.
David will
Is
tell
this
you, you just
something-
study the grant itself.
Okay.
The grant itself will tell you what you need.
Is this something that you need prior to next fiscal year, or is this a budget request?
For the equipment, we would like to get it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's getting to a point where we use machinery like that around the town. Try to pick up, when we have a bad storm, stuff like that.
It's nice to have.
The equipment's gotten really bad.
Yeah,
The equipment's bad.
it's dated. We just say that, it's dated.
Are you planning to keep the old equipment?
We can sell that off if we can and make
Right.
money.
Is it serviceable?
Yeah, it's still.
Mayor, I believe it was $8,000 repair bill on the backhoe to kind of bring it back up to.
But now we fixed some stuff on that since then.
Right,
So
they're still using it. We
we're-
still
we're-
use it,
yeah.
so you can option it off or whatever. Yeah, we could definitely resell, if the county wanted to take it, put it in an auction, it's definitely resell.
And we'd already gotten a quote, which people, John Deere or whoever we tried to buy.
I believe we were talking Caterpillar.
It might have been Caterpillar. They were giving us quite a bit for it with the trade-in, but I know how trade-in works. They can mark this one up, bring it back off this one,
So what is your thought on that, Chad?
I was just again, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's serviceable and you guys need the equipment that you're getting from the county for town work, if it's serviceable and still works, would it be worth it to give that to the utility and let that be some of the utility's first equipment? I don't know. I haven't seen the equipment. I don't know if it's any good.
It's outdated. It's past its time. It needs to go somewhere.
I can't remember the number. I may be wrong about the 8,000. I think 8,000 may have been a trade on that machine.
Yeah, I think it was. It was 7, which I thought was high. I mean, if that means anything, because this thing is old. I mean,
I think what we should do is, have you work with Connie and see kind of what you think would be the best way to go on that. See what.
This committee wants us to put in a request to the county commission.
Okay, and I guess, Mayor, we can bring it up we'll talk a little more about it at our next.
we just need to get some quotes again, because them quotes that we had.
Oh, yeah.
We need to,
They're
we
not
need to get
good
with,
anymore.
name if you could get with Scott and tell her to call, we've got some quotes, but I'll tell her also.
But we just need to know
get
exactly
quotes.
Well, if we're going out, we'll get the quotes.
Okay.
We just need to know exactly what it is.
Gotcha.
Because, you say dump truck, that could be.
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah, you're talking single axle, double axle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as long as we can share it with the utility, I think we can work that deal out.
Well, like I think, Mr. Joel said, what we need to do is just, it's owned by the utilities. I mean, it ain't owned by Wastewater. We can't, it's owned by the utilities department, so just store it for a while. Either.
Well,
we
but,
can use it.
I mean, we just kind of work it out.
Town needs it, yeah, I mean.
Yeah,
the
just,
town
Well,
needs
we'll work
it,
with
so-
Joel on how to work.
if we need to take it down to Three River, if the county needs to take it down to Three Rivers and dig a ditch or something, go ahead, it's kind of one of those mutual things, I think, is what we can do. I mean, that's hence why we are building this partnership.
Right.
I mean,
In effect, the county would end up buying it. And then, I'll work out the details with Joel, whether it's, eventually we'll give it to the utility when there is a utility, prior to there being a utility.
Dale, hasn't the county done something like this for the school district before? Yeah, I mean, it's an interlocal agreement, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be easy enough to do, and again,
Okay.
public purposes are being met on all fronts. I think the council needs to make the request, the commission needs to consider it, and then we do an interlocal, me and Fred draft it up right before he heads off in the sunset. We're heading off in the sunset.
I'll make you the sunset. I heard he was, the day before he was city manager.
What?
That's what I heard.
I don't think he's crazy enough for that.
I heard they were going to, I was just waiting.
That was hearsay.
Yeah. Hey, that was a little joke.
The administrative viewpoint would simply be, would either of the two transactions stand independently of one another, in this case, but one. Personally, from an administrative level, I don't see anything wrong with that type of arrangement.
Greg, do you have anything else about the water system we need to talk about today?
No, sir.
I just like to say, I appreciate y'all looking at this here. I think this is definitely something that we need to look into with the HDPE and, make a decision on that. I think it could be a substantial savings to the county and to this utility. I say I appreciate y'all looking into that. Update on, wastewater treatment.
Well, with where we stand on that is, Brian knows the town approved, and David knows that, approved not only signed the DEP grant for the 5.4 million, but approved, the contract for us to go ahead with design. So we're moving forward with design on it now, with the plan for this first phase, because the way that we're attacking this is doing the 3 phases within Fort White. Complete that, and then the phase 4 will lead us into the next treatment unit and disposal, be it rib or spray field, on another piece of property, because again, the town piece over where the gun club is can hold what we need for Fort White, but it's not going to hold what we need for Three Rivers. So that's been signed. We're starting the design on it. We've also we submitted for Springs grant for what we call phase two. And that will be heard by the district, which is just, it's just them going through the process. But we'll be there next week to answer any questions they've got, and then that will end up on the DEP, hopefully to get approved this time for phase two. And then we also are finishing up the facilities plan for SRF for hopefully the remainder of funding for Fort White itself. So that way Fort White will be covered monetarily, unless of course we can get another grant from the standpoint of wastewater protection grant, when the state opens that back up. So that's where we stand on that.
So y'all, everything's approved for y'all to go ahead with your engineering and design?
Yes, we've already
Yeah,
started.
we approved that at our meeting last Monday. Okay, that's great, news. Okay,
And
Now-
Chad did apply for the river grant for meters as well.
For work.
Now, I will add, excuse me, I will add that, that in order, I'm sending Connie back for some paperwork that I need Ronnie to sign when that gets around to him, so that we can close off the facilities plan and sort of wrap that up in a nice pretty package, so we send it in to the state revolving fund. But other than that, at this point in time, I think we've got, everything that we need from the town, from the county.
good. All right, Fort White grant funding opportunities. David?
That's basically what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I was gonna say we handle that, yeah.
Well, just kind of add to that, there is a lot of money out there for water. So, I think we can take advantage of that, both federal and state level, as is appropriated money. We have let DEP know, the person that's been coordinating that, we've given them kind of our wish list, for all parts of Columbia County. So that's not an application, that just puts the project manager, lets them know, hey, there's needs here, and be looking for it. Kind of.
Yeah, we were told that she had $1 billion to get rid of, her words, not mine, within the next fiscal year. And, so what we did was we handed in a list of stuff, and we included on that list. Now, none of this means anybody's got to get forward with anything, but we included on that list the rest of the monies for Ellisville. So if you give them somewhere else, and give them somewhere else.
Yes.
So that's been included in there as well.
David, if we go ahead and get the money, the ARP money that we've got and give it on over, can y'all go ahead and do the water meters with it? And if we do get the grant, will they just reimburse y'all for what you spend on the water meters? Is that how that, or will the grant that we've applied for the meters just go away since we already paid for it? How's that work?
I can get the paperwork from Connie on the grant that you got.
Yeah.
Make sure everything
Yeah.
goes according.
I was gonna say, Chad, you already applied for a grant for them, right?
Yes, sir, just this last funding cycle.
Okay.
And it didn't really align with the grant requirements, so I'm not too
Confident that we're gonna
feel
get
real
it.
great that
Right.
it's gonna be awarded, but, we were putting our best foot forward and making the effort, trying to get some funding for it, so.
Gotcha.
Basically, the district came up.
I
and
guess
said,
my
You got
question
a
is-
week to turn in an application.
Right.
Maybe we'll
Oh,
come.
but I guess my question is that if we go ahead and buy the meters now with the money we're given, get that project started, if that does come through, will they just reimburse y'all for?
We can always use it.
Yes, so you can use it for something else since we already paid for the meters, right? They won't just go away if we got it, right?
Well, I need to look at the grant paperwork. And it's all in the details in the paper.
Sales grant was really good.
Yeah, David's correct, you gotta be careful, because some grants are reimbursement, where you gotta show where you wrote a check to somebody, and provide that as documentation that you paid for it. If you can't do that, you don't get money.
Right, right. That's my question is, will it just go away since we've already paid for them, or can we get reimbursed for
Yeah,
it?
it can.
Not us,
Right.
but the camp, the utility department, can we get reimbursed for the money we spent? So, okay. Just a question.
So everything's in the details of that grant application. There may be a way to go back and say, well, we want to reapply it to the project. Everything's in the details of the grant.
So David, I guess what I'm hearing here is somebody needs to work with Connie from the county. I know we don't have a utility director hired yet, but we need to start working with County Fort White on this grant money to help get it, to the right, where spend on the right stuff. Let's go ahead and get a plan. And bring it to these meetings so we say, well, we got this money here, let's do this. I guess what I'm saying, we need to have a plan of action, how we're moving forward.
Fort White needs to give you guys the information on what we have to spend.
Right.
And yeah, we need to get, I
Whether
guess,
it's through Greg or,
Right, I mean,
Bob or Chad, whoever.
So yeah, we'll need to get the grant agreement, the $1 million legislative appropriation, just get a copy of it, a copy of whatever other grant agreements you have for utilities.
right,
See what it says, so we can make sure that those things happen.
yeah, exactly. That way we're not losing any money. I mean, it's hard enough to get it already, it's just.
Mayor, I would ask that you give your clerk and say, let's go in, let's provide this information. Yeah.
We gotta get around it, because you gotta use it for water, sewer, we can't use
Yeah,
it, we
well,
tried to use it for other
I mean,
infrastructure
this is the
stuff.
kind of
That's-
stuff that could be on this agenda today, but that's obviously y'all have that grant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, so I think, and I know, we can't talk about it outside of a meeting, so it's hard for us to do this except for here. So, basically, I think, like Chairman said, maybe get with Connie and figure out how much money we have to put forward. And, get an exact number together. I mean, I don't even think we have an exact number on how much we have in
Yeah,
grant.
just in 150 is what I said, then another 150 must come behind.
Right,
So
Plus $1 million.
plus $1 million.
Plus the mid, right, plus the
I mean, so yeah, I say we figure out exactly what we got to spend and we can start appropriating.
I think it'd be very helpful if you had someone a central coordinator, and you had let them create a table of grants that have been applied for, the status of them, what the amounts were, what they were for, because Chad's doing some, we're doing some, and all this, but we need to bring it all together.
That's my point, there, somebody needs to be
Coordinate.
looking at all this.
Because your millions didn't earmark for Elsa.
Right, yes, exactly.
I mean,
But there's more money out there, and we need to know what we've got covered and what we actually got. in
Right, that's
there, and
exactly
what
my
we're
point,
pending,
yes,
and
sir.
what we need to be asking for moving ahead as well.
I mean, that's information this committee needs to have.
Yeah.
Right, the utility committee needs to have all
Right.
that.
So I don't know who that person is, but somebody needs to be coordinating all this, one person. Needs to be talking to everybody and have a list of coordinate, if that's done through, North Florida or through Chad or through you or. But that's something that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
Immediately. Any more discussion? Anybody have anything else?
And I guess the other question is, the town of Fort White had the plan that was put together by the Rural Water Association. That included different projects that had to be done to the system over time, and included rate increases that were gonna be adopted. Are we still following that?
Yeah, we've had our last rate increase was probably 3-4 months. Yeah, but we're still on schedule with that.
Yeah.
So
Now,
yes.
and the adopted interlocal on water says that everybody will follow. So
Right.
I mean, the interlocal says we will, so if we don't want to, we'll need to.
And that's what I'm saying, this committee probably needs a copy of that agreement, so we can, we need to make sure we're on top of that and we're following that.
if this committee's gonna run the utility,
Exactly.
then you need to have that.
Yeah, we need to have
Just give it to
that.
Ms. Connie, she.
I've got a copy on my desk.
Okay.
So we'll make a copy, Connie got copies, I think, send a copy to Chad.
What will be coming to you will be, obviously, as we get, along with sewer, will be what SRF requires is mandatory hookup ordinance. So I've sent to Connie and asked that be put together, and the attorneys take a look at that and make a determination how they want to craft it, but I sent her some examples.
You send us a copy as well?
What's that?
You send us a copy as well?
I think I did, David, but I'll look. If I didn't, I'll certainly, even if I did, I'm sending it over to you.
Because once this becomes constituted, this board, I would assume, would have to adopt it as well.
Well, yeah, the local governments will adopt the ordinances. But, yeah, I think we need to look at the counties as well, because ours is mandatory until it's not. Chad knows what I'm talking about.
It's true.
So we probably are gonna have to fine tune ours to satisfy the states.
Yeah, we can send us a copy, we can share with Joel. And that was my whole point, is to get Joel copies, we can make sure
No,
both sides do.
I'll send you what we got.
So David, you're gonna put somebody over this, or you gonna be over somebody?
Well, I'll put somebody over.
Okay. I was gonna say, you probably need to put somebody up there.
It won't be me.
You have enough, exactly, so, yeah. All right, any more discussion? Greg, you have anything else you need to add? Bob?
No, sir.
Well, we appreciate the work y'all doing, and Chad, do you have anything you'd like to add, or?
No, sir.
Chad, we're gonna be asking you to help out with this utility, keep us informed on what's going on and help David, so. You need to involve yourself as much as you can and staying on top of this stuff, so. Williams? I'm good. Anybody else, Mr. Oliver? Jennifer?
I just, I'm pretty sure David's thinking the same thing. I think the project development manager that we hire would be a suitable person to manage that grant table that Greg mentioned and make sure that we're all on the same page with that. But that's something that David and I can talk about.
Yeah. What do you expect to have a project manager?
Well, we're in the point where we're discussing we've selected a person, we're in the negotiation phase, working on you gotta do the background investigation and physical agility and all that stuff. So we're hoping to have somebody on board by the first of June.
First of June. Sounds good, okay. All right. Anybody else have anything to add? We'll call for adjournment. Okay.